dissolution of the union alone cannot solve the problems of Nigeria, because there are Nigerians in every part of Nigeria. And Nigerians who are in positions of leadership will take a talk Nigerian attitude to every new republic that they create. So what we need is actually the reform of power, or the habits of power. I'll cite one example and I'll give you away. One of the difficulties that Biafra had, which many persons do not speak to, is that the people who ran Biafra were ex-Nigerian big men and women who went into Biafra with attitude of Nigerian governance. So while the masses were dying, there were people in office that were profiting from the war. There were war contractors that were profiting from the war. There were civil servants that were still in the new state. There were people who were taking wrong decisions. And of course, there was a military class that was brutal on the civilian populace. So that country was as abusive as Nigeria was. And so let's understand that if you look at the 36 states of the country, there isn't any state in Nigeria that has shown better character of governance. None. And some people are quick to cite Lagos. And when they do that, I ask them, is there any Nigerian problem that Lagos has overcome? Any? Housing, security, water supply. What is it? There are no slums in Lagos. What is the quality of Lagos hospitals? It might be better in comparison to some places, but every Nigerian problem that you find in Uyo or Port Harcourt can be found in Lagos, including corruption. So the problem that we have is a problem of governance. And the smart thing is that those who are in power know how to activate ethnicity in order to dodge the important questions that we must ask of those that are in power. That's a peer review mechanism of failure. And those who are in power are comfortable because there is a normalization of failure in Nigeria. Finally, it should...
You heard the lecture, very brief, very pungent, then finally, he addressed this question of truth and power. Truth versus power, what happens? And then restructuring. I personally think that one of the problems of Nigeria is that you have the Igbos and the Yorubas in the same country. The same country where they are now colliding rather than collaborating. Perhaps if they were in different countries, they will be able to, collaborate rather than clashing, competing all the time. But as he pointed out, even if we split this country into 50 or 60-something countries, as long as the Nigerian attitude continues everywhere, you'll be having the same problem. The Nigerian attitude to governance. There's no change. The fundamental approaches to governance, nothing will happen. You have the same problems all just replicated in different places. There will be new minorities, there will be new elites, there will be corruption, always this competition for power and power for self, for the use of self rather than developing the country. I think we need to address this very seriously because no matter, as I said, even if all the countries opened out, we all ran out, what will happen to Nigeria? Where you have a country with enormous resources, both human and material. We have to think about it. I personally think that one of the basic problems we have is that everybody is expecting to reap before sowing. We have not developed the country, but we want to enjoy what developed countries are enjoying. And so when we don't see it, we run to other countries, But I think the problem we have is that we are a generation that has to build. That is our challenge, you know. We have to develop the country, and we have to face the problems which other countries face when they were developing. Not to be thinking that you must enjoy. When you have not done anything to build, this is the generation that has to confront these problems and solve them. Then other people will start running to Nigeria later to come and enjoy here. You know, they'll be japading, or there's a new word for it, japada. Japada, yeah, I don't know. All these new terms that you young people invent. Anyway, that's my own brief comment. So I'm ready now to take, okay, first comment then. Yeah, please come. I think you have to come because of this mic. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, for you. Thank you so much for that wonderful keynote.
You will have to tell us your name, and then.
My name is Olaton Gabby Williams. I'm I'm from Goth, and I'm a journalist, a book industry journalist and publicist. And my younger brother gave me many years ago a brilliant book called Culture Matters, and it was looking about how all the different cultures in nations that have been colonized, you know, and how they have responded to the challenge of post-colonialism and modernizing and joining the world family, you know, and the struggles that we in our part of the world have. And the deduction that the researchers made is that there are things that are fundamental in some of these cultures of the former ex-colonies that lend themselves to modernization. And there are things that are conflict with the demands of modernization being a true integral part of the global community. And that it's a problem because when you're dealing with culture, you're also dealing with identity. This morning, I don't know why, it just came to my mind that I was thinking about, I'm Yoruba, and my Yoruba, you know, family and friends always complaining about meritocracy being dismissed. And I just suddenly thought that this has a lot to do what we are condemning as evil may actually be an outworking of the way we look at the world and how we put a far higher premium on rewarding the bonds of family, rewarding the bonds as Yorubas, rewarding the bonds of wider family, and the wider family, well, the friends, the close friends we call family as well. I don't know about other cultures, I know about mine. And I just wondered what your take is on this. Dr. Gomba. Or Barry, can I call you Barry? I'm Tom.
Thank you. Well, for now, I will just take a response, but later on, I'll be taking the questions together. So maybe you want to respond to this one.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm going to ask, are you the author of Lagos Heat? Yes, I am. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I remember I saw that book long, long ago. And thank you for being part of this event. Let me start with culture. I understand the importance of culture and how definitional culture can be, and how culture conditions us, and how we come to be viewed, particularly from the lens of the cultural space that we belong to. But I also understand that culture cannot be cast in stone. Okay, it cannot, because culture is a human creation. So when I get into a place and people say, that's how we used to do it, the question I ask is it fair? Is it consistent with our definition of fairness in modernity? Take like the killing of twins or the caste system. There were times in this world when we insisted that those practices were important to the well-being of community. Twins had to be killed, okay? So, and stuff like that. But now we've come to a point where we understand that those things do not have any value in the preservation of society. People who lived in that era fiercely defended it because that was their understanding of what it took to create the purity of culture. But we have come to a point where we have understood that there was a weakness in that. So any culture that is not evaluated by its practitioners is going to become dictatorial because no person in the 21st century is allowed to live the way his ancestors lived if there is no justification for it. I cannot adopt the life of my ancestors in the 16th century if that lifestyle is not consistent with my reality in the 21st century. The same thing with, let's say, virginity. There were families that were ashamed in our past because they could not present their daughters to marriage as virgins. So where is that now? Society too has evolved. So, but there are also core values that we must hold to, like the sanctity of life. It's in our culture, the sanctity of life is ingrained in our culture. Like the pursuit of morality, certain kind of morality. Our society is front against corruption and theft. Okay? But we also understand that in every perfect setup there are weaknesses. Because it was in those same societies that we had strong men who sold our people into slavery. And it was in those same societies that we had our people who enabled colonial officers who were in minority to overrun a territory as large as Nigeria. So every cultural space has always had its weakness. And where we stand today, we must be critical of the past and ensure that whatever we are taking from the past must be that which serves the present. And I don't know if I've answered your question. The second part of it was something about identity. Yeah, so that is it. I mean, we invent identity too, and we invent culture, and we define ourselves by that. But the truth is, you know, if you were born in Cabaret, definitely you'll be a different person. Possibly you have a different name, and you'll have a different way of defending it. But this is something that I like to say. There's a lot of evolution that has taken place in our cultural spaces. And some of the cultures or ethnic identities that we define today are actually identities that our ancestors did not share. It's like somebody would say, okay, fine, I am from Ikwere. It's possible that that person's ancestors were from Iche. Now, if you're going to define contemporary politics in Rivers State, the person might be ultra-nationalistic in defense of Ikwere as against the interests of the chairman. And they might not really know that 400 years ago, the founders of this community came from Iche. So there's a great deal of mixture that has happened in our cultural spaces over time. And many of the fierce defenders of ethnicity now, actually people who originally were not from the ethnic blocks that they defend. That's what I think. It's fluidity.
Thank you. Who next? Manote?
Okay, there's another microphone, okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Arnold Ajeluoro. You mentioned restructuring in your keynote, and that word has been in the political space in Nigeria for a very long time, right from Abacha's time. And I'm aware that the current president was one of those who were the ardent, proponents of that slogan, even as governor of Lagos State. So, and over time, a lot of people have attributed a lot of meanings to that word. And so, where exactly are you coming from in this, with it?
Yeah, can you go ahead?
Okay, so it might be out of place to be absolutely prescriptive about the nature of restructuring that we need in Nigeria, particularly because I understand that for restructuring to take place, there has to be a conversation. The biggest problem that we have against restructuring is because those who fear the world or who have come to demonize it are preventing a conversation from taking place. I think that's precisely the problem. Because if we come to a space of conversation, we can agree on the best way forward. But very often when we talk about restructuring, there are people who quickly demonize those who are canvassing for it because they do not want to have uncomfortable conversation. But there are a few things that we have agreed on, okay? Not because we have written them down, but we have agreed on. We have agreed that Nigeria, as presently constituted, is not working for the interests of all Nigerians. So if you have that agreement, it means you must work towards fixing the problem. We have agreed that there are people who are talking about marginalization in the polity, and there is justification for that crime. For instance, one of the reasons why IPOB is popular is because you do not need to work very hard to convince a young Igbo chap that Nigeria's history has been unfair to the Igbos. Even if it's just the Civil War and the tragedies that the Civil Wars represent. It's not difficult. One of the reasons why militancy thrived in the Niger Delta is because it's not difficult to go to the Niger Delta and tell a young person that there is an oil well in your community and the person who has the right, who controls the block, is a chieftain from the north. It's not difficult. So there are basic things that we must deal with. Look at the police, for instance. Is it difficult to tell a Nigerian youth that the police is a criminal organization? There's almost no person in Nigeria who has not suffered from the police or knows someone who has suffered, either brutalized or killed or extorted. So we must face the police. So there are a number of things. There are Nigerians who believe that the electoral process is flawed. You do not need to convince us about that. Even those who celebrate false victory know that the process is not free and fair. And if that process turns against them tomorrow, they will complain. So there are a lot of things that we need to fix. And then let me go to restructuring. For God's sake, how much blood do we need to defend the borders or the map of Nigeria? I mentioned Southern Kaduna. A lot of genocide is going on in Southern Kaduna. Nigerians dress every day. People, communities are overrun in Southern Kaduna and it's normalized. It doesn't even make the news. It doesn't. Just like kidnapping does not make the news anymore. And we know that to fix security, you need to reform security architecture in the country. So we have a lot of work to do as a people. And we must restructure, even if it means restructuring in one sector at a time. When INEC came with all the legal provision for new ways of organizing election, we were upbeat about it. Because every Nigerian wants election to be free and fair, unless those who want to steal victory. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to speak to INEC and insist that we must come to that point where the credibility of an election, even if it's only 100%, will be better than it is now, so that we can have confidence in the electoral process. So I'm not speaking to only one aspect of Nigeria. I'm speaking to every aspect of Nigeria where we believe that a lot of things are going wrong, including my own constituency, which is the university. We must run the universities better than we're running the universities now, because the university is the biggest site for the production of manpower. It's the biggest site. So, and no country grows above the capacity of its universities. No country. No country can grow above the capacity of its universities. Because the university will produce accountants, will produce engineers, will produce lawyers, will produce doctors, who will serve as manpower for your country. And in this age, and your politicians, who will take decisions, political decisions that will affect your life. In this age and time, it's even worse, because a critical mass of Nigerian youths that were trained in Nigeria are becoming manpower, even labor slaves in other countries. We have a lot of work to do. We must restructure. We must.
Yeah, any next comment, please? Next comment, next question. New question. Are we all satisfied then? Hmm? I'm surprised that ODI is not saying a word.
The microphone, sir.
Come. No, you keep your own.
No, but I'll get it back.
Okay.
You don't have to stand up, please.
Why not leave me alone? Well, I think that I must make you comfortable by getting up. Kunle, I don't think it is right for you to ask if I have something or nothing to say, because you would know I will have something to say, but that I could postpone what I wanted to say, because I mean,
You're not allowed to.
We've just had a very wonderful talk, and I think that all we need to do is to clap, and what you have asked me to do is to stand up and clap. There are two issues for me. The word reset means that you can wipe the slate and redesign the movement from A to B to Z. In Nigeria, we are hardly able to wipe the slate clean. We have a very badly written history. We don't respect our historians, and the historians have moved to the point where they no longer respect the truths that they discovered about our past. If you listen to many iPod activists on TikTok or on television, you would know that they don't read Igbo historians who have written about Igbo land. If you read our friends from Odua Republic in Nigeria, you will know that they have refused.
Where is Odua Republic?
Let me finish.
Where is it? I don't know.
There are Nigerians fighting for it.
Yeah,
so let me go on. When I said iPod, you didn't ask me what it meant.
I know that one.
You know that one. Okay. If you ask any Yoruba speaking Nigerian about Nigeria's history, I can tell you they've not read much of what has been written about Nigeria's history by historians from the University of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University. The truth is, we don't listen to our historians enough, so we recycle fictions that have very little relationship to much of what we consider our history. I will just say two things and stop, because we have days in which we must argue about these things. What is usually presented as the history of Nigeria is one that distinguishes between all the ethnic fractions in the country, shows how different they are one from another, and why it is impossible to bring Nigeria together to formalize a civic culture. The truth is that Nigeria actually began as a holistic, unitary system. When you remember the talks about Nok culture was a coming together of the various fractions that came from different parts of Africa, including those who came from the Jewish dispersions that flooded Africa. All of them gathered in what was central Nigeria. And when I say this, I am not inventing. You only need to remember when the Yoruba folklorists talk about their beginnings, they talk very fruitfully about how they were in a center called Ife. Historians have just properly told us that that Ife was one, and that there was another Ife. One moved to the other. And Afibo, who happens to be one of the few Igbo historians who agree with the Ife historians, has told us how the Yoruba and the Igbo belong to a common culture which split into two, one going west-west and another going eastwards. They try to make us believe that there was no differentiation between that Ife and the Ife we now talk about. The truth is, Nigeria was built up by peoples who were first together before they split into different fractions. Before Oduduwa, everybody knows that there was an Obatala. And those who refuse to accept that Obatala belonged to an Igbo culture, which split into two, are happy to continue saying so because they want us to believe that the difference that happened at the beginning is what sustains the differences that we still have. It is not true. The truth is, we were one, then we split. The folklore that Professor Choinka tells us about how the original gnosis was smashed, and that we broke into pieces. It's a history we need to reinterpret in such a way that we can tell you this. As the Igbos were moving away from the center of Nigeria, and the center of Nigeria was around Jeba, Ife was closer to Jeba. It was a Niger-Benue issue. As the people in the first Ife pushed the Igbo eastwards, they too went into their own problems, moving closer to the Nupe and the ethnic nationalities close to them. We had a differentiation of groups. I can't go into it, but I can say this. The language that they speak in Igbo land, the language that they speak in Yoruba land, the Hausa, the Fulani language, all of them have common root words which prove it, and all our linguists have been saying so. They have common root words which prove it, that the languages that are spoken in Nigeria all belonged to a common fraction of linguistics. If we have abandoned our past and we are interested only in the differences that were created after the slave trade and the rest of them, what it means is this. In order to reset, we must reclaim that history, that original gnosis, that original knowledge making, which people like to call knock culture, or they like to situate as before, after Oduduwa. They don't talk about before Oduduwa, because if you talk before Oduduwa, you'll be talking about virtually all the other Nigerian groups that belong to that common culture. The Edo are only too close to us.
I'm sorry, I have to intervene.
Yes, I'm just going to end it. To end it, what I'm trying to say here is this. The differences that we are all trying to interpret do not in any way offend the reality that we began from a common knowledge system. The fact that differentiation in terms of distance has changed the languages that we speak, do not in any way change the reality that we came from a common village, on that after that village broke into pieces, we only needed a mobilizer to bring all the people together. We could not do it in the past. We need to do it now. Even if we decide to move away from Nigeria today, the same problems will arrive. The Nigerians who left during the slave trade, some went to Southern Africa. There are Nigerian similar languages spoken in Southern Africa, in East Africa. The Igala and the Luo have a relationship that we cannot run away from.
I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to.
When you do history in this way, of moving from a center before the fractionization, we need a recouping which will bring the fractionization back to a centrality, which is why Pan-Africanism and federalism are the two most important ways of dealing with Africa's problem. We are not as different as we claim to be. I think that if we look at it from that angle, we might be moving towards it. By the way, what I've just told you, I've already written in the book.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I wanted to say that I'm afraid that I don't know how I can, but we have only 2 minutes. That man is saying that we do.
Mediterranean Sea, Middle Terra land. So the Mediterranean Sea broke Pangaea into some north and some south. The one in the south, which was Gondwana land, also broke. You see West Africa like this, you see Brazil like this. They were joined together before. Arabia and Ethiopia, just that strip of sea, they were together before. India, particularly like this, joined the Horn of Africa. That was Gondwana land. Now, what was the situation in Pangaea? Known by the Igbo people on the Asaba side, Osumili S.
I say that you're written about
S. Osumili. When you cross to the other side, the S becomes sh or shimini. If you come down towards abo, they say osamari. Now, SML, SML.
Yeah, I'll have to stop you, sir.
We should stop.
I'll have to stop you, sir.
Shall we
Sorry.
stop?
Because
Okay.
all this.
No, I'll stop. I'll stop.
Because the next session has to start. So please, Obari, can you quickly round up so that we can.
Okay. But ultimately, we must keep our eyes on the future. We must ensure that the mistakes of the past and the mistakes of the present do not go with us into the future. Our children may not be as tolerant as we are. They may not have the capacity to endure as we are. So let's not hand over a dysfunctional country to our children. We have a job to do, and we must do that job in the present. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. No, we hand over to you. Then thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm doing it very. I shouldn't be in a Professor off the stage, but respectfully, I've done that. So we just take a quick picture, and then we'll go. The next phase was actually we ought to go to the Cora library. We've just installed a library here. I was supposed to go there. Those who are supposed to clear the set, Shegu, I gave instruction now. Who is clearing the set? Look at that one sitting there. So we're supposed to be going to the library for Professor Shafison to declare it open. But Mike. So maybe we'll do that another time because we've lost time and there are people waiting so just quickly take pictures. Tonya Kyosho to come and Mr. Tonya Kyosho, please. We're losing time, please. Well, we're running out of time. Let's settle down. In the hall. Anoche, let's settle down. We have to start the next session, please. Okay, let's settle down. We need to start the next session.
Gentlemen and ladies, or ladies and gentlemen rather, So we're running out of time, so I'm not going to attempt to pretend to speak to why I'm here. We all know that it's a reset, and it's largely a festival about history. Now, the idea is that we have a new government, and part of the things that Labaf does is to provide, based on Nigerian text, what people have already published in books, some kind of context, for that government. There's nothing you read in Nigerian newspaper today that's not been documented by somebody in book form, some Nigerian. So that's really what we come to do. And the two books that we're going to be discussing now speak to this particular point. Or ask sort of like this kind of question. Was there ever a glorious moment in post-colonial history? Because in the hundreds of conversations around the performance of the social contract between the state and the citizen, there's a mythical past that's always been held up as a more perfect area than the present. So Professor Shofison will say there was a time that people went to see theater every day, we don't go to see plays anymore. Some people will say that even at that level. Now, the farther that past is, the better it appears in a collective rear view mirror. The pre-colonial African society featured not just a simpler time, but supposedly hosted a communal landscape that fostered a higher quality of life. That's what we all say. The first 10 years of post-colony provided the educated African a better access to opportunities than the case is 60 years after the lowering of the Union Jack. Is that correct? But we have not exactly scrutinized these assertions. Some of these books have done, and that's the reason why we have deliberately chosen Akima Bogunje's A Measure of Grace, which is a large biography. And it provides you some kind of an idea of, anyway, that's what, let me not say what the panel that is coming will eventually determine. I cannot, once I say that, then I've predetermined what they are going to discuss. But I will say this much: as we determine to use history as a guide to reset the path to the greatness of our country, this festival has selected these books written by Nigerians born in the 1930s, who came of age as a ferment for independence was in full swing. They had distinguished careers in the early decades after independence, and settled into fully productive, lives in the 3 decades afterwards. This is their story, and we use their story as a guide to understand where it was that the rain began to fall. So I'm going to call Mr. Kunle Ajibade to moderate this conversation. I should, yes. And with him, to discuss A Measure of Grace, my friend Jide Bello, distinguished lawyer. He has a very difficult task because he had only 1 week. He had less than 1 week to read that book. It just wasn't easy to find anybody who had read A Measure of Grace. But Jide, delivers consistently. The next person I'm going to call is Tade Ipadeola, the poet who won the Nigerian Prize for Literature 10 years ago. And the last but not the least is Anote Ajeloruye. Oh, no, that's not that. Ajeloru, yeah, yes. One of the most significant art writers who now runs a blog, a website on the arts of the country. So yes, my job is done, right?
Thank you very much. Prof may be leaving, but you are going to part chairs and then because he has to go to another appointment. So he's going to be doing that. He's a manly, because I know that Tom will give us hand. He's a manly. We actually had two people who wanted to be here. Well, one of them is on residency. She has to be on a residency outside of the country, and so she's not here. So it's not our fault. It is the fault of the residency. Because this lawyer will go and write something. So I'm going to ask Prof to declare it open, and then, but the other matter has been sorted out. Sorry, Chair. Prof was asking if he's the chairman. He's just going to make a remark because he has to go another appointment. But I wanted to say that Sheuma Bokunje is here, and we're reading his father's book, A Measure of Grace. Thank you very much, Sheung. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't know I was going to be chairman of this particular session. I must confess that I haven't read two books. I've read partly what's it of Grace? Is it? Yes. Which was well written, but I haven't finished it. I haven't actually seen the other book at all. But I mean, it's I don't really have to read them before I can pass a comment on what is happening. A lot of biographies and autobiographies, in fact, are far more enlightening about our history than some of the books we have. So, and these two people are very eminent people who have covered a lot of distance in the making of this country. So what they have to write is obviously very important for us to understand our history. So with that, I'll just, okay, some young people are coming in. I don't really know what the chairman is supposed to do, since there's a moderator. Said I should just let you say what you want to say. Kunle, I think you are going to start now.
Thank you very much, Professor Femi Osovison, the chair. Since the general theme is resetting and all that, I think it won't be out of place to sort of lay the grand rule for this panel. Akiosho has spoken about an aspect of it, but my understanding is that we'll be doing much more than what he has said. So I have a brief opening remark here that will sort of tease out what our responsibility, what our task is on this panel. And it's a very, very wondrous task indeed. So I've titled it, History Be a Guide. These opening remarks. I want to thank Tony Akeosho, German and Nikulakpo, and the entire Labaf team for putting this panel together. And thanks to all of you for coming. Socrates, the Greek philosopher from Athens, says that an unexamined life is not worth living. To Socrates, we become fully human when we use our highly developed faculty of thought to raise our existence above that of mere beasts. One way of doing that is with argument and debates and controversy on the higher purpose of existence itself. It was not for nothing that Socrates himself loved symposiums. Tony promised that we're going to have a symposium, right? He sort of ran away from that in his introduction. So I'm bringing that back. We're going to have a symposium. Was there ever a glorious moment in our post-colonial history? That's a provocative question. Was there ever a glorious moment in our post-colonial history? The two key words here are glorious and post-colonial. Glorious as in spectacular, wonderful, superb, sublime, worthy of bringing fame. And what are the defining features of post-colony? Professor Achille Mbembe, the Cameroonian historian and political scientist, in his stimulating and influential book on the post-colony, has brilliantly described, interpreted, and theorized post-colonial realities in Africa. I will quickly try to summarize his careful and complex descriptions at the risk of oversimplifying them here. He argues, among other things, that post-colonial countries in Africa are still tied to their enslavers politically, economically, and even theologically. The post-colonial ruling elites, just like the colonial masters, operate with a circular logic that the purpose of governance is to make people obey rather than doing them some good. These elites appear incapable of making a clear distinction between ruling and civilizing. They suffer from anxieties of colonial influence. Hence, you have regimes of unequal exchanges between the Euro-American financial institutions and the post-colonial countries. Regimes of privileges and immunities. Regimes of the rule of man, not the rule of law, as they abandon the rest of their countries to live a precarious life characterized by uncertainty, chance, and absurdity. Yet, against these odds of post-colony, Nigeria, since our flag independence in 1960, has had glorious moments in its checkered history. Some glorious moments. It was as if those who made those glorious moments possible simply discovered their missions, to echo Frantz Fanon, rolled the boulders like Sisyphus up to the top hill and just went ahead to fulfill them. What were those glorious moments? What does that history of glories say to us today? That's the first task of this panel. What were those glorious moments? What does the history of those glories say to us today? We shall then read excerpts from Peter Enaro's Then Spoke the Thunder and Akimabo Ogunje's A Measure of Grace, and generally discuss the two voluminous memoirs in the light of what it all means to function as consummate, honest professionals in a post-colony. I repeat that. We shall read excerpts from Peter Enaro's Then Spoke the Thunder and Akimabo Ogunje's A Measure of Grace, and generally discuss the two voluminous memoirs in the light of what it all means to function as consummate, honest professionals in a post-colony, because that was what they did in their times. Mr. Peter Enaro was born in Uromi, in Edo State, on 21 January 1935, and died in London on 24 April 2003. This year, he was aged 88. He was a super excellent journalist who became editor of Daily Times at 27. No. Editor of Daily Times at 27, but editor of Sunday Times at 23. Editor of Sunday Times at 23. Professor Akimabo Ogunje, and of course he went on to be editor-in-chief of Africa Now and other magazines. Unfortunately, when he came back to Daily Times, after so many years of glory, post-colony caught up with him, right? Until the end of his life, he regretted ever coming back to Daily Times because he couldn't make a success of Daily Times again, right? The Daily Times, under his editorship, that used to sell 180,000, 220,000 dailies. By the time he came back under Abacha, could not sell up to 5,000. And the man thought, he could rescue the paper. He came to rescue the paper, but he was the one that needed rescue at the end of the day. That's what post-colony does to people. So that's the context I would like us to examine him and examine his volume of memoirs. Professor Akimabo Ogunje was born on 18 October 1931 in Kano. He died 4 August 2022 at 90. Some said 91, but it was 90. He was the first Nigeria's professor of geography, and he succeeded in mentoring many other professors of geography, wrote seminar books, won many awards, and helped to build institutions. He was in the university for just 23 years. When he turned 50, he left, and he started building institutions all over the place. Apart from being the father of Seun, who is sitting down there, is the father of Professor Folashade Ogunshola, the current Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, the first female Vice Chancellor of that institution. She was also the first female Provost of the College of Medicine in Idiaraba, and the first female professor of microbiology in Nigeria. That's Professor Akimabo Ogunje for you. So let's go straight to it. What are those moments? Do we have some of those moments glorious moments in our history, and let us, just a mention and then justification of them. That's our first task, right? Anyone with some list among the panelists? I'm not too sure did you get the brief well? Anyway, because I suspected that Tony didn't do that. So, okay, all right. Yeah, you have some list. Great. Jide Bello.
Good afternoon, everyone. In looking at resetting the nation and in looking at the glorious moments we may have had in our post-colonial history, this particular text, which I had not read until it was provided most graciously by Mr. Akinwosho, was an example of some of the glorious moments that have existed in our post-independence and post-colonial situation. The structure of the book is a personal biography to a large extent in the first half, and then the second half of the book is an enumeration of various national tasks and international as well by the author. And a very easy way of actually looking at these glorious moments, because they show a time different from our times. These are dark times indeed, troublous and problematic. But what we have here is we have an enumeration of various things that the author did, and I'll just take probably 2 or 3 of them without taking too much time as instances and moments in our history when we showed foresight, when we showed independence of thought, and when we showed possibilities that, that were ennobling, and also that can act as examples that our younger members of the audience can look forward to. So, the first one will be the socio-economic survey of the Kayenji region and the sort of intellectual work that went into resettling people in the Kayenji, the use of geography, the use of research departments, and a lot of intellectual output by people who are skilled in the universities vis-a-vis a real need, which was an urgent need to increase the supply of electricity to the nation. And the manner in which they handled resettling the locals in the area, I was about to call them natives. And that is one example, the socio-economic survey of the Kayenji region, and it now leads to the second one, because I'm going to give only 3, but there are as many as 8 or 9 different instances where we can see the quality of thought and the use of the intellect and a display of optimism vis-a-vis our situation. The second one is actually in chronology before the Kayenji one, but it's about the challenges of the census taking that had to be done in 1963 and in 1973. No matter how we cut and slice it, the matter of the census is a very sensitive issue in Nigeria. And the narration here shows that there were committed individuals, publicly spirited individuals who are willing to contribute towards this issue without any form of political affiliation, but at the level of pure use of science and their skills as geographers, mathematicians, and researchers. So that's the second instance of a glorious moment and a positive moment, because we can actually say that the 1973 census was actually the last real generation that we had. It's unbelievable, but it actually seems to be the case. The third one is the planning of the Federal Capital Territory. And in the planning of the Federal Capital Territory as well, we had an instance of a new nation state beginning to look away from colonial history and looking at accommodations that could be made to enhance unity, to think about how we could plan our own lives and plan a new capital. Yes, the master plan may have come from Kenzo Tange, but a lot of the intellectual input and a lot of the hard work was done by Nigerians again. So in a way, without doubt, there are moments of glory in the post-colonial situation in which we find ourselves. And also, it should never be in doubt that we have these records, because this is a great book, but I really wish it was much more available in a way, but I guess that would be a problem of book distribution, which we don't want to get into now. But this is a fantastic text that is in the nature of a personal biography and also an enumeration of someone's concerted effort over his 91 years of life to continually improve. And in, let's say, the 63 years after independence, there is an enumeration of continual contribution to our lives by dint of hard work and sheer intellect.
Thank you very much, Barrister Jide Bello. Let me make this thing very clear, all right, or clearer with this example, so that we leave this place at least with some ideas of what we are supposed to do with this question. In 2009, the Independent newspaper of London asked 80,000 people, 80,000 people in 8 countries to come up with a list of the most amazing achievements of human race in 20th century. The most amazing achievements of human race in 20th century. And they came up with a list of 50 things, 50 achievements. One of which was the end of the Second World War, scientific inventions, the presidency of Barack Obama, the release of Nelson Mandela from jail, the fall of Berlin Wall, all of which points to the eternal verities of, humanity. That's the kind of thing I thought, we should first of all do here. All right? And, right, I have some list. I have some list that could guide us. Because I also have some people to please, can you, all this while we've been saying Nigeria is a total wreck, nothing succeeds in Nigeria. Don't we have history of glories? So I asked 2 professors, a lawyer, and 3 public intellectuals, and Sheikh Modegbami. And you won't believe it, some of the things we have shared. The moment of Nigerian flag was raised at the race course for the first time in October 1960. Okay? The end of Nigeria-Biafra war. All right? The award of the Nobel Prize in Literature to Wole Soyinka in 1986. The Commonwealth Writers' Prize given to Festus Iyayi in 1988. Novel Heroes. For his novel, The Famished Road, Ben Okri won the Booker Prize in 1991. We thought that was a glorious moment for Nigeria. In 2005, Chimamanda Adichie won the Commonwealth Prize for Purple Hibiscus, and in 2007, Orange Prize for Half of a Yellow Sun. In 2007, Chinua Achebe was awarded the Man Booker Prize International for Literature Achievement for his lifetime achievements in literature. In August 2020, Burna's album Twice as Tall won the Best World Music Album at the 63rd Grammy Award. Right? Yes. And on and on and on and on like that. Odegbami, of course, sent me a list of glorious moments in sport. The Tiger who won the world title in 1962, said that was a glorious moment for him, for Nigeria. The African Nations Cup in 1980. In 1976, Nigeria Shooting Stars defeated Tonnerre Kalala of Cameroon and won African Winners' Cup, making Shooting Stars the first Nigerian club to claim a continental glory. Super Eagles qualified for 1994 World Cup and so on and so forth, right? So, if these are some of the glorious moments, the term glorious moments, right? Are they really glorious moments for Nigeria?
Hello. I think, no, I just have a comment which I would really like to make, and I'm making it for young people, because there's a way in which perspective is always important. Perspective is important because from the list that Mr. Ajibade read, prizes, one. But the glorious moments really are hard graft, hard work, sustained education of intellect, sustained hard work, sustained graft. And in this man's life, what I would like young people to understand that you can live a life of 61 years, and even in chunks, you can work very hard at things and add things to what exists. So if there's no prize to be won for resettling people in Kainji, neither is there any prize to be won for resettling people in the Federal Capital Territory. But these are significant achievements that we did, and they are part of great things, glorious moments that we may have achieved. The electricity generation in Nigeria may not be what it should be, but we have worked hard to get it somewhere, and there are possibilities of us working even harder in the future. So to me, perspective is very important.
Yeah, Tade.
No. Okay. So very much. I listened to the lists, two lists that have been read from, and when you examine them, using Peter Nahoro's then spoke the thunder, they fall very, very short, of the glory that any country should actually be boasting about. The first one, which I read from, which is the raising of the Nigerian flag. If you read the way Peter Nahoro described that moment in his book, he was just in his office at Kakawa as the editor of the Daily Times. He refused to come to that discourse where the ceremony was being held. Why? Because as people in my, Isoko say, when they're weaving a mat, they say if the first line goes askew, doesn't go straight, every other one will go in that pattern, far from the target, as it were. So the first one has to be straight, so that the others will also follow in that pattern, to the very last one. He said his brother, Anthony Nahoro, raised the motion for independence years prior, in 1957. 53, sorry, yeah. But the man who was being given, was making the exchange of flags, was the very man who opposed that very motion for Nigeria to be independent 7 years prior, 1953. So that was some kind of cynicism it just couldn't stomach. And as a journalist, you train to be cynical. You want the best, but you hope that the best will come out, and it wasn't coming out. It didn't happen that moment. So the glory that would have come to Nigeria, and that pattern has more like been the norm, as it were. When we're supposed to be where we should be, something or some trivial argument comes up to obtain that momentum. And by the time we're thinking of regaining the momentum, other things would have happened, to overtake whatever intention we had. So yes, of course, the dam thing was a great thing. Resettling Abuja, capital territory, yes, great thing. But of course, you want to look at this and blood and the environment of the people on whom these achievements were made. What exactly is the fate of those who were resettled in Abuja for the Federal Capital Territory? No single Abuja indigene has become the minister of the Federal Capital Territory since the capital was moved there. Well, of course, you could say it doesn't have to be a native, or, sorry, somebody from the place. And I get that. But in the nature of our polity, you need to give those who are on ground, they don't have a sense of belonging, and it's key. But we haven't done that. Abuja was built from proceeds of wealth from a certain part of the country. Do we have half a measure of what is in Abuja in that place? I'm sure we can do better. Thank you.
Tade Kwadiola.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was tasked to read this book, Then Spoke the Thunder. The question I have for you is, have you read this book? How many people have read this book? Then Spoke the Thunder, Peter Enahoro. I have not read a book that I so violently disagree with, but at the same time could not put down. The reason is that Peter Enahoro is one of those people that was born to do just one thing, to write. And he wrote. You can imagine the kind of emotions running through this man, realizing that the man who moved the counter motion to the independence motion that his own brother moved in 1953, the same man, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, was the man that the British decided to hand, and his life was a series of some such occurrence, one after the other. So you cannot really blame him for having a perspective on events in Nigeria. It is ironical that when Peter Enahoro had to flee Nigeria, on the very day he had chosen to flee Nigeria, was the day he came closest to acknowledging that there was something great about the Nigerian people. Not the Nigerians, and we make the difference. Not the Nigerian state, the Nigerian people. I'm going to read a portion from the book to illustrate the point. I was about to take leave of Remy and the children when panic struck. I couldn't find the envelope in which I'd retained £500 cash when I purchased the traveler's checks at the bank. We searched everywhere. Loss of that amount would make a huge dent in my capital, but I decided I had to press on. Then the thought occurred to me. There was a slim chance that I left the money on the desk of the young man who sold the traveler's checks at the bank. It was worth a try to make a stop at the bank. Ah, sir, thank God you are back. You forgot your envelope on Friday. I didn't know your home address. The backstory is this. Even he did not know his home address because counter coup had occurred. Peter Enahoro's father, who was ill and was awaiting surgery at home, had mandated that his son moved base from his house. So he was sleeping house to house with friends. So even he did not, and by the way, it was actually dangerous. They came for him. He was lucky to escape those that were assigned to kill him. So, thank God you are back. You forgot your envelope. If I didn't know your home address, or I personally brought it to you. The young man held a sealed envelope containing the full amount of £500 to me. He represented the Nigeria I grew up in, a country of basic decency, basic honesty, and self-offering kindness outside of politics. That Nigeria will quickly fade before soldiers were done. I did say that I had cause to violently disagree with some position that the author took, but at the same time, it's curious, it's strange. I could not put down the book until every page read, because he had such a of what mattered and what did not matter. It is interesting that my brother identified the census as one of the glorious moments. And because I don't want to hog the microphone too long, he says, not because his brother was the one that moved the motion for independence in 1953, but that in his own personal reckoning of where the rain began to beat us, Peter Enahoro he has no equivocations about it. that it was the moment he realized that we could not conduct a census on our own. And realizing the import of that failure to be able to conduct a census as a country, he knew that we were in trouble. Have we really gotten over? I'm talking as a man who sees through the lens of Enahoro now. Have we really overcome that obstacle, as big and as simple as it is? Before I hand over the mic, let me confess. I stole a book from Ode Ofemu's library. The book is called Europe and a People Without History. It's written by a professor called Eric Wolf. And this man argues that the things that really matter in the record of people is how accurately they are able to render basic things. Things like, how many are you in your country? So you see, by the way, there are those who violently, again, disagree with the 220 million figure that is being thrown about, who argue that, as a matter of fact, we are not more than 140 million in Nigeria. My point is that the Nigerian people are glorious, but the Nigerian state has at no time, according to Peter Enahoro, been glorious. I wouldn't blame him, because a man who has escaped so many attempts to eliminate him in his life, both inside Nigeria and outside. Because when you are reading, I think Toyin Akeosho made the point that there is nothing happening now that if you really go back in our literature, you will not see a parallel sometime. If someone is kidnapped at an airport in Kenya and brought here, and you think that is new, it is actually not new. If you don't know about the story, there is another story here of how the Nigerian state arranged in Dar es Salaam to have this man kidnapped and brought to Nigeria. So a man like that is not likely to agree with you that the Nigerian state has at any time been glorious. Thank you.
Thank you. Tade, you just said now that there are some portions of this book you violently disagree with. Do you want to share some of them with us?
Oh, yes. I wish, for example, that a man as acute in his recollection and reconstruction of events did not myth with verifiable facts. There's a game that grand narrators of our history play from time to time. And I think today, even Ode Ofemo has reinforced aspects of that game. And it is to say, you see, this big, great country evolved from me. So, Peter Enahoro revisits that trope by saying, you see all these Yoruba people lay claim to Lagos, lay claim to this, they are actually Benin people. That the Benin are their progenitors, and so on and so forth. It may be true, and we will need the help of geneticists to actually unbundle these things for us. But a book as important as this, really, I feel that this book ought to be 2 books, so that the events leading to the civil war that he recounts here are separate from the events that went before in prehistory. I know that all of us will love to lay claim to Nok. He, by the way, lays claim to the Nok civilization as the source from which the Benin civilization now took real fluorescence. But I would wish that this book made that separation between what is the empirical provable and what is speculation. The reason why I say that this is doubly tragic is that when Peter Enahoro addresses the question of what the Northern Press, through the Gaskia Press, did in the aftermath of the first coup, the January 15 coup, he keeps saying that everything that was circulating in the north, he was one of the very few journalists who actually went up north to verify what was going on. He keeps saying that all the things that were being, published from time to time were all speculations. So he knows that speculations can actually undermine the truth of things. But he himself is guilty of the same when it comes to the grand narrative of how, Lagos came to be and whatnot. So I would wish that he drew that distinction, but he did not, and there is no helping it. He's no longer here to rectify that or to correct it. But the truth of the matter is that he has a firm grasp of the sequence of things, and it demonstrates, for example, how certain things could not have been as reported in the official sources as at that time. For example, what happened in Ibadan when the squad that went to eliminate Ironsi and Fajuyi got there. He shows with really logical facility how it went, not how it was widely reported, and so on and so forth.
How did he go?
Well, I would say, and I'm not supposed to say this, but wait. There is a book coming out very soon by a man who used to be head of state and who later turned himself into a president. When it comes out, I think aspects of this book will be shown to be what really transpired. For example, did the people who went to Ibadan, the State House, did they have orders to eliminate Ironsi and Fajuyi? The conventional wisdom is that they did. But the truth of the matter, according to some authors, is that they did not. Their mandate was to bring the two to Lagos, and that it was non-commissioned officers who actually executed these people. But anyway, that is a matter that we are going to treat further downstream.
He actually makes a reference to Danjuma's book.
And now it is becoming clearer that even Danjuma had to flee because he was a commissioned officer, and he was not of the stock that pulled those people down and shot them dead. Anyway, Professor.
I'm glad you brought up a question that is fundamental to all these testimonies. First of all, if you look through our history, there always seems to be a discrepancy between people's views when they're young and then when they grow old, particularly of the radical perspectives. When they're young, when they're very radical and all this. And then they get into office or get into power or something, and then their views surprise you. If you read this book by Peter Nahuru, you'll be surprised because what he was as a young editor, then what he later became after exile, yes, very sharp, which is why you get this uneasy feeling when you read the book. But the second point is that those, on the other hand, who get to make, well, they decide that they are not going to face the negative sides, but they'll just continue to do what they can for the country, like Mabukunje, have a different perspective. He was almost in every government you want to say, but as a technocrat, he said he was going to be a technocrat and do his work, which is what he did. He didn't pay attention to all the, if you like, some of the things that bother some of us, some of the casualties. He was just ready to do the best he could in his profession for the country. And he did it marvelously. Various projects that, The third point I want to say is that what seems to, you probably noticed this when you read these biographies, is that there's always some intention to clear the people's names, to whitewash, certain things. So I'm not sure about even the testimony that you mentioned recently, of the general who's going to write. Everybody wants to exonerate himself after handling power and doing various things which the people have objected to. You're obviously concerned about what history will say about you. And so many of the testimonies we read are full of a lot of mendacity, I must say. You are not sure of the actual truth. So, and I think I've written about this, how biographies are written, are sponsored, in order to exonerate people, to explain their roles in history, and falsify history sometimes. So we have to pay all attention to all those things. Thank you.
Talking about,
I wanted to add one word.
Let me quickly support what Professor Sovison has said about falsification of history and the compulsion of players, political players, just, to write about history and what Tafawa Balewa has, had to say on that. This is from Enauro. I liked Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa immensely because it was shuttling between all these political the office holders, and thought he was the most long-suffering politician of his generation. I listened to B.C. Onabanjo teasing the Prime Minister good-humoredly at a reception for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Onabanjo asked Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa when he will publish his autobiography, Azik, Awolowo, and the Sardauna of Sokoto are done. Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa replied that he would not cooperate with a biographer, After he was gone, people would say things of him they would not say in his lifetime. And that would probably be the truth. He laughed. Let history be the judge. Now, because we've been talking about Peter Inauro, let's shift to Mabogunje now. And I'm reading this portion from The Joys of University Teaching. It's been to Northwestern, to Cambridge, to everywhere in the world. And because there was a universe in the University of Ibadan during his time. People were coming from all over the world. He was an authority. He was also being invited everywhere. As a young man, in his 30, 34, 35, 36, energetic, everywhere. Now, he says this. After about 23 years of hectic, exciting, and exhilarating, what he described as exhilarating teaching career. Now, he said, I returned to Nigeria after a leave of absence in July 1979 to a university which was already suffering severely from the indifference of the military to its funding in spite of the continuous growth in the number of students and staff. Things were no longer what they used to be. Funds for research were severely cut, and the library could no longer pay for many of the learned and professional journals that made working the university such a delight. The supply, wait for this, I nearly pooped when I read, the supply of chalk was rationed in 1979, University of Ibadan. A few expatriate colleagues began to resign their appointments on the grounds that they would like to remember the university as it used to be. My colleagues, Professor Ojetunji Aboyade of the Department of Economics and my co-director of the Planning Studies Program have been appointed the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ife in 1975. He had insisted that he had no intention of seeking a second term at the expiration of his tenure in 1979. Both of us were born in 1931 and took the decision that when we reach the age of 50, we will retire from the services of the university. And that was what he did. Thus, during the course of the 1980-81 session, I gave the required 6-month notice to retire from the services of the University of Ibadan on September 30th, 1981. Now, Barrister Bello, you... No, finish. Oh, okay. I was just going to go back to Peter Inauro. Okay.
I think there's...
Okay, it left over.
Yes. There's a need for a slight detour. In what I said earlier, I was referring, it's a bit nuanced and it may have been missed in what I'm referring to is an effort, an application of knowledge, an application of science, an application of the intellect to a task at hand. So if I made reference to the censuses of 1963 and 1973, I should actually tell you that the title of that chapter in the biography is The Challenges of Census Taking. And in no way is the challenge diminished or set aside. In every reference to those things, the first one is that the census was conducted sometime in 1962. When the results of the census were presented to the federal government, a political crisis arose. Simple. It was not successful. It was a problem. Same thing when he talks about the census of 1973. He says, when these figures were shown to be unrealistic and unlikely to be acceptable, the then head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, still went ahead to announce the results of the 1973 census. Almost immediately, this provided a sharp political reaction and an incipient crisis. Regarding the next census, which would have been the one under Babangida, he says quite clearly, a new National Census Commission was set up with the Makama Bida as its chairman. Again, I was invited to serve as an advisor to take charge of the enumeration area demarcation. By then, I had decided that my time would be better spent doing other things. So I declined to serve. I, however, suggested that the task could be equally performed by Professor Ruben Udo. The point about rehashing this issue is that what the glorious moments may be in our history are not necessarily when Wole Soyinka wins the prize. It's the hard work of a publisher of books, ensuring that books get onto the shelves and the books get onto the shelves. And a consistency and an application of effort and intellect continually in service of our objectives. And this must not be diminished by any stretch of the imagination. This must not be reduced by the lack of prizes, the lack of awards, or the lack of a lot of noise and fireworks. There are glorious moments, and those glorious moments continue to exist in our history.
Yeah. Sorry, I just to maybe, I want to say that we can never have objective opinion about this. For some, moments of glory will be moments of shame. This has been a problem, to have a moment, maybe when we win football matches. Maybe you can have a totally, I think that's shameful. So we always have that also, the perspective of history, that what we all thought, when the coup happened, the first coup happened, for example, I was one of those very, very happy about it. We were dancing around Ibadan. But when the second coup happened and we saw what happened, we had serious views to look back at what really happened, at what we thought was glorious. Was it really glorious? When we began to have more facts and so on. And this has been the continuous problem we have, that some moments seem glorious to some, they are not glorious to others. And then even those which seem glorious to us, in time, when we look back, we realize that they were bad, they were not. And they've led us, I mean, many of us, for example, fought for the unity of the country. We were very happy when the unification decree was made by Ironsi. Now, many years later, we saw it was an error. It shouldn't have been done, So we must always put that in perspective, It doesn't mean that there were no glorious moments, but, that they were probably not shared, and that maybe they don't last, Thank you.
I think to even, just what Prof has just said, this is exactly how Peter Naro also captured some of those moments. I mean, the military coup, he was in support. He felt that the country was ripe for a revolution. That was the exact word he used. But by the time the second coup happened, and then things began to unravel, and when particularly when the northern soldiers who were gathered at the Kejak cantonment, I mean, his house was just a few, less than a kilometer or two from when they besieged the Maryland Axis, and they were searching passengers in vehicles. Who are you from this tribe? Are you from this place? And all that. You know, over time, we began to see that the coup was an error, the first one, because it was leading to somewhere dangerous. And then the northern soldiers actually wanted to pull out. At the point, they felt that, look, okay, they should actually, who advised them not to eventually? But of course, they've taken power, which is something that, you know, we need to also question, you know, about those two coups. So the first one was by Nzogo and his 5 majors, and then Ironsi declares the unification decree, which certain soldiers from a part of the country felt they would not be able to keep pace with because they were disadvantaged. You know, they were not that as many as the other people in the civil service and in all the arms of government. So they wanted to sit, they wanted to leave. But of course, they were prevailed upon, and then they remained, and they went to Ibadan and killed the head of state and Fajui in Ibadan. So why did they retain that unification decree? By the time Gowon took over power, why didn't they bring the country back to where it was? Because you killed these 2 men because of this decree, for Christ's sake. So why didn't you reverse it? At what point do you see the advantages in it for you? Because, I mean, in the Nigerian parlance, it's always what is in it for me, not what is in it for us. And we have continued to slide or suffer from the consequence of that decision, you know, not to throw away Ironsi's unification decree for the one that is a lot more embracing. And, you know, that has been, I mean, earlier on we listened to Dr. Barry Gombas speak about restructuring and all that. These are also part of the things that arise from that dangerous decree, which, although of course Ironsi might have had good intention to have promulgated, because he was a soldier, he wasn't really an administrator, so he didn't know, he felt that was the best the country could have at that point in time, you know. And those who came felt, oh no, this won't benefit us, so we need to change it. But then they stuck to it, and ever since we've known how dangerous that decree has been to the very unity which we all talk to or speak to glibly, that, oh, Nigeria's indissolubility is Nigeria is as if it is cast in stone. No nation is ever cast in stone. It has to be negotiated. So at what point will we negotiate it away from where it has become a Darkling plain?
Barrister Jide Bello just brought my attention to the fact that the unification decree was actually repealed. But what I want to say is that the nature of decrees is such that there is both the letters and the spirit. You may have excised the letters, but the spirit remains. In fact, there's a whole book, a legal treatise devoted to the spirit of the laws. That spirit was never exorcised from Lagos and Aso Rock. But I want to, you know, beg us to allow me to draw back a little. The historian Mary Bird was asked a question once. And the question was, at what point would she say that a people become civilized? And she was of the opinion that when you can prove that a human being with a broken femur was nursed to healing and health, then you can say those people are civilized. If you extrapolate to countries, are we able to heal from this broken femur of the Civil War, which has really not ended? I think Odiofemu wrote one book, which he never published. When does a civil...
He did, he published it.
So why is it not in the bookshops?
Anyway.
Well, my point is this. I think that this book should be read by every Nigerian that is interested in the contesting narratives. This author makes it very, very emphatically clear that Kaduna Nzorgu was not the leader of...
Yeah, he wasn't. I was... Yeah.
But the popular narrative says that he is. That it was actually Ifejuna. The one that is more contentious of the things that he records is that the poet Christopher Okigbo actually knew more about each step of what actually transpired than all the official accounts report. For example, he wrote it down that he was in Ibadan. He was at Mbari when the first coup occurred. And that what happened was that Christopher Okigbo dragged him and one other. It was at that point he realized that there's a script that was being played. The problem, of course, is that by the time the counter coup happened, and then even those who thought they had a script found out that there were forces beyond them, then he realized that a country as big and as complex as Nigeria needed to operate on a very, very different plane. Back to whether we are able to heal the femur that has been broken. The question, the aid that Peter Enahoro prefers to the reset button, because he could never quite reconcile himself to Nigeria, regardless of whether he came back or not. But he prefers that we return to the regions, if not in the letters of the law, in spirit, so that the disparate groups in Nigeria can develop at their own. This is not a new thesis.
Yeah.
Obafemi Awolowo has said the same thing. And by the way, you asked me to illustrate what I mean by my violent disagreement with this gentleman. Peter Enahoro could never agree with the man who described him as Ine-Ehoro.
I was looking for that. That's Akintola.
That's Akintola.
Yeah. That's Akintola.
And
he went to visit with Akintola.
Yes. It took him working outside Nigeria as a journalist to learn how to divide his emotions, separate his emotions from what he was addressing as a journalist. But he was still here when Akintola called him Ine-Ehoro, and he's a very proud man, a very proud Esham man. And he says, to address my family, to mangle my family name in that way, so he wouldn't even listen to whatever it is that Akintola had to say.
No, but it tried to provide the context for that. I mean, because see, he wasn't the only one that Akintola, because of his linguistic facility, this was, described that way. Other people were also, described in that manner. It describes it, and we sort of also appreciate the fact that look at this bagger, trying to, show to me that he could use Yoruba to manipulate and, and mutilate my language. I mean, my name. I was going to ask Anote the other time when he was describing Antonian, the theater of that second coup, and why Peter Enauro had to leave his Antony village house, residence. The point it tries to make here is that he needed to go because certain individuals knew that he knew Emmanuel Ifiajuna so well, and that the manuscript, Emmanuel Ifiajuna's manuscript, one manuscript, different versions later on, because Emmanuel Ifiajuna kept rewriting the manuscript, and he himself, began to say, well, the manuscript I had is, yes, it's different from, other versions. And it was J.P. Clark who called him and spoke to him in code that, hey, my friend, that thing waiting for your house, it's GCN, that's like NEPA, please put on for GCN, no. ECM, put on for ECN, no. That's J.P. Clark. Okay, which further shows the level, the intensity of the friendship, in this book. I mean, it's also a huge tribute to friendship, just like A Measure of Grace. It's also in some portions a huge tribute to friendship, right? That what? That can we talk about that briefly? We only have 3 more minutes to go. 3 minutes. Yes, let me ask you.
Okay. What is interesting about this session is that you did not privilege the 2 books that we are looking at. Those 2 books are glorious. And honestly, when you look at how they treated their charge, one in the media and one in the university, you will see that they gave ample treatment to the gloriousness of the features around them while they performed as academic and as journalists. If you wish to push it a little further, you will say the Daily Times that came out of Professor Mabu Gunje's input. It was not only that he was privileging the university as an institution of glory. He showed that in the process of demobbing that university, he showed how we were removing that glory systematically and in a way that if we really wish to go back to correct, using his book, we can almost see what we need to put back in place as they were being removed. I like the fact that you talked about somebody who was a head of state and a general who would be telling us a different story. I can tell you this. all that story that has been said about Ifeajuna's book having different versions is more rubbish than truth. Because I have written, if you have read my When Does a Civil War Come to an End, and you have read it, if you haven't read it, that's too bad for you. I mean, the manuscript did not change much from when J.P. Clark and Christopher Okibo brought the book from Ghana. The two of them went to Ghana to bring Ifeajuna back to Nigeria. And the book they brought wasn't really different from the one that Chinua Achebe and Christopher Okibo were still looking at when they got to Biafra. What was said in that manuscript, which ought to have been published by now if Nigeria was a different country. No, it's not because we are not serious.
No. Why didn't Odia?
I have a copy of the book, and I made sure.
Which book?
And
the manuscript.
Ifeajuna's manuscript.
Not book.
No, wait.
Chinua Achebe refused to publish
Just wait. Chinua Achebe refused to publish it first in Herman, in Heinemann, and then in Biafra. It was only the second time. First in Heinemann, and then in Biafra. Don't want to publish the book. They rejected the book the first time because it did not contain the meat. But that was not the truth. The truth was that the group that carried out the first coup, or the group that conquered the first coup, did not want the book published. There weren't too many stories. One of the things they objected to very strongly was that I'm relating to Peter Enaro. He said our plan was to carry out this coup and make Awolowo our leader. And if he refused to lead us, we will lock him up in the State House and issue decrees in his name. That was the point that was creating problems between all the publishers and all the attempted critics who were when you read Peter Enaro, you will see that Peter Enaro was in between the various groups. He actually showed the glory of the Nigerian situation by the manner in which he treated that coup, because he took the coup seriously enough for you and I today to be able to say that he got the story right here and he got it right there. Nigeria was a place where you could tell a good story. And frankly, the gloriousness of the storytelling that was Nigeria is evident in that book.
Thank you very much, Odia. We are rounding off. Okay, so you didn't start. You didn't start. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but we are going to have to take 10 more minutes. We have not started. You see, I was excited when these two books were paired, and Tony Akeosho assured me that Jide Bello was going to treat the measure of grace. But you have not even given him. You have not even given him the
debate.
The space.
Tade Ipadiola, the debate continues after.
Because the reset is what we're after.
No. There's another panel after this. Odia. Of course, you know, I have different versions of your book. No. Let me quickly. Yeah. Once he sees an error in one now, he will go and print another one, and then another one. No. The point I wanted to make is that there were conspirators in that first coup, okay? And the publishers, according to Peter, to be honest with you, until I read him, I was believing the popular official story that the publishers, including Chinua Achebe's Citadel Press and Heinemann that you talked about, wanted reports that would strengthen them to publish the book.
Exactly.
Okay? And so, who did Citadel, Chinua Achebe contact? Chinua Achebe and Cyprian Ekwensi contact. Nzogu, give us a report. We are sending this manuscript to you. And Nzogu blasted Emmanuel.
That pretender.
That character. You want to believe that character? Look, let him face me. And I will put a lie to many of the points he's making here.
But that's why the book should have been published.
Wait a minute. To publish a lie?
No. Everybody was telling his own side of the story. Somebody told his side of the story. Maybe
they should have asked, okay, Nzogu himself to, okay.
Exactly.
Write your own.
Here's the thing about these kinds of books. Until we all read them and sit in a circle and discuss the fundamentals, we will.
All of us here should do proper reviews of these books. I'm talking about it like this, and it's not to those two books. They are very good books.
Yes.
They need to be properly written.
Someone is working at already, Mr. Audia Ofemu. Thank you so much for saying so. On that note, I want to thank the panelists. I know that, look, as Tade said, we've not even, started. These are terrific books, and I thought that we will have till tomorrow to discuss them. But here we are. So I thank you for your contribution. Tade Padiola, who was trying to make a hero out of Peter. No, wait a minute. I was just pulling your legs. Thank you for coming. Jide, thank you so much. Prof, thank you for your interventions. She, you want to, as chair?
I don't mind the coup d'etat, so thank you, everybody.
Mr. Kosho, please.
So we have other people coming.
Because
so thank you very much.
We have now missed a whole session. And Dr. Luke Bile is there, so I'm so sorry. I have to do a dirty job of stopping this. Go to the next session. The book trackers, we already missed their session now. They go to 5:30, so they'll come at 6. Thank you very much. We just take a quick photo.
Thank God, and I would like to make me chairman again.
No, you don't have to be chairman again. Prof is already protesting. Please, photo please, quick. Let's have a quick TOJ. Quick photo. Quick photo, please.
You ordered my wife to do it.
Quick photo, TOJ. Please. Quick photo, please. Quick photo. Quick photo, please. The next session, we're losing time. And people are on Zoom waiting. Quick. TOJ, arrange this. You want to make it very quick. Auntie J, please.
History, as we know it, be without the cult of personality. In the festival's choice of historical texts as tools to examine how the Nigerian state can reset its governance machinery to serve the people better, we have chosen to engage with the sagas of two individuals, preferably non-monarchical, who championed rights of the people in different ways. Their stories offer us different compasses to navigate how constructs of statehood should have or not have been. Pelewura was the first Iyaloja of Lagos. In telling her story in factional form, the author, Dr. Femi Olugbele, weaves a fascinating narrative of colonial Lagos. Nnamdi Azikiwe's transverses were more of a global nature, including the Gold Coast, the United Kingdom, the United States, before returning to play a key role in the independence movement. From the history and history, we ask a question. How differently could it have turned out? What alternative future can we extract from these trajectories? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this panel is set to resolve. Thank you so much, sir. You know, there are some moderators that you just know will deliver. And so it's very difficult. We don't even worry about going to. So that's why you have a Jide Bello again, and you have a Kunle Ajibade again. So that's the way it works. I mean, we wish we were more democratic, but that's just the way intellection works, you know. I mean, where is, I'm going to grab him. He's going to come back. He won't go away. He likes argument too much.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well, clearly? Yes, sir. Frankly, we need battery rating knowledge. So good afternoon. I welcome you to this session. And it gives me really, joy that this book is out. Yeah, and it's a book that all of us need to celebrate. Dr. Femi Olugbile, as you know, is a psychiatrist and a brilliant one at that, who has succeeded in climbing perhaps the entire ladder of that, profession of his. And then combines that, just like some of those polymaths, in some of the best American universities, who is endowed, by God to traverse different territories. In his own case, the writing arena. He writes exceedingly well, I can say that. And it was in 1986 that his collection of short stories, The Lonely Men, won the Association of Nigerian